By the way, figure I should make this clear before I start talking your ear off. I'm not a Colts fan. I just like to collect my sports shirts, and this felt like a good one to wear. It has been quite the opening 2 weeks to start this NFL season. So, at risk of setting off the most fiery fan base in football right now, making enemies with a group that I really do not want to be enemies with, sounding like the ultimate biased fanalist, before I even get to elaborate on my point, I am going to give a take that I genuinely believe. That's gonna sound pretty hot at first glance, that I do believe, if you give me the time I need to elaborate on, is not biased at all, may actually be worth considering, and might just be the smartest, most unbiased, fairest, and most open-minded take in the history of football, sports, and sports media. Well, not actually, of course, but I think this is worth airing. I really do. You ready? Here it is. I'm not sure if it's fair how good the Eagles are at football. I'm just not. And I don't mean that in a whiny way. I don't mean that in an agenda-pushing way. I don't mean that in a manner related to Jalen Hurts in the slightest. I mean that in the broadest sense, the fandom sense, the all 32 sense, the state of the league sense. And I want to talk about why, because it's very relevant to recent happenings in the NFL. So, why do I say that? Here's why I say that. This past weekend, Joe Burrow went down with a major injury. It's looking like he's going to miss the next 3 months of football. It looks like he has turf toe and torn ligamentation that will require surgery in his foot. This is what, the 6th big-time injury of his professional career. It's a devastating one, possibly a season-ruining one for the Bengals, and at the very least, undeniably, a legacy-harming one for Burrow. Recently on Twitter, I made the statement, and I didn't mean this in a sensational way, that Burrow is turning into a what-if in front of our very eyes. I've been seeing a lot of Andrew Luck comparisons over the past couple of days. Not only does that comparison pass the eye test, I mean, we know that Joe Burrow's injuries predominantly have been because of poor pass protection. It statistically aligns with Andrew Luck as well. These guys got killed or are getting killed over the course of their careers. It's unacceptable, it sucks, it's frustrating. I'm not even a Bengals fan, and yet this Burrow news has weighed on me over the past couple of days. It's been on my shoulders. I can feel the pain, the sorrow, the anguish of that fan base. Now, on a very related note, I was watching the Eagles game on Sunday. I watched as the Eagles beat the Chiefs handily, the defending Super Bowl runner-ups, in a game where they did not even have 100 net passing yards. And that felt weird. Now, again, drop the pitchforks. I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts has to throw the football for an Eagles win to be honorable, valid, and permittable, but I will say that I can't help but notice how odd this type of win is. How unorthodox it is, how almost privileged it is. Please don't kill me. This was a good stat brought up by Sheil Kapadia. Over the last 2 seasons, when teams net under 100 passing yards in a game, and those teams are not named the Philadelphia Eagles, they are 5-17, because it's very hard to win in football without getting yards through the air. You need a great offensive line, a great run game, obviously, to move that ball, and you need a great defense to keep you in games, because this would imply that you're never really behind. You never need the chunk gains that you can often earn through the air. The Eagles, though, in these games in which their quarterback nets under 100 passing yards, are 4-0. This is their element. This is how they like to play football. And again, all due respect to Philly here, this stat is a testament to how easy they have made the game for their team, for their quarterback. You know the saying, I know the saying. 3 things can happen when you throw the football. 2 of them are bad. Props to Philly for avoiding negative scenarios as often as possible. That is the football dream. Anyways, I saw the Eagles do this on Sunday. I saw this stat. I see this team that is 2-0, that is the defending Super Bowl champions, that appears to have one of the best rosters in football this year as well. And I'm thinking to myself, truly, genuinely, I know you're probably not believing me right now, that I am happy for their fans, for Philly natives, for people that have been with this team through thick and thin, through the highs and the lows. But then I get the Joe Burrow news. That's what happens next. And the pain that I then have to feel, because evidently I'm an empath, I guess, for Cincinnati fans in comparison, well, it really got me thinking, because I started to feel guilty. I'm not a Bengals fan. Most of us are not Bengals fans. Most of us don't have to deal with that kind of pain. And that's what brought me to this question, this exploration, this probing of whether or not what certain fan bases have to go through over the course of seasons, player careers, often their lifetimes, these fans' lifetimes, is fair. So right now I'm clearly arguing that Eagles fans have it better than most, that they're then by definition privileged. And I'm saying that Bengals fans, and maybe some other fan bases, are relatively, in comparison, underprivileged. That brings us to the important part of the discussion here. What creates privilege in football? Some of you might know the answer to this already, some of you won't, and those who don't, I'll sum it up pretty quick. In football, there is a salary cap. It's supposed to even the playing field. That's why it was created in the first place. There is a maximum spending limit on a per-year basis that every franchise has in this sport regardless of how much money they make on the side. This means that the Bengals, in theory, should be able to spend the same amount of money on their roster on, say, protecting their quarterback, Joe Burrow, as a team like the Eagles might. A big market team from a big city, bigger than Cincinnati. That's how this is supposed to work, and it is kind of how it works. But in practice, there's a big problem here, or not a problem, but a loophole here. The NFL gave an inch, so to speak, and a team like the Eagles, a team with a fantastic owner, figured out how to take that inch. That inch being guaranteed money in contracts. You can look me in the face and tell pretty quickly that I am too young and simply not smart enough to be able to explain economics, finances, NFL salary finances, cap workings, math stuff to the degree that you might want if you're curious about this stuff. That's obvious. If you want to learn more about this stuff, then I would suggest Brett Coleman's video, his YouTube video from this past offseason, How an Accountant Broke the NFL. The inch that the Eagles took, the loophole that they found, the reason that they won this past Super Bowl, one of the major reasons, is because of the fact that, in relation to the salary cap, when it comes to guaranteeing money for players in the future, within that cap limit, there is a requirement in football, as I understand it, that a team be able to guarantee a portion of that money in liquid cash. That an owner has that money on deck, able to hand out pocket change, but like in the millions. A team like the Eagles, an organization like the Eagles, in a very stable financial situation with a large net supporting cast here of characters for Jeff Lurie, their owner, a team with an owner who, mind you, is an expert on the inner workings of TV deals, NFL TV deals, a guy who then can kind of get the jump on, predict even the way that the salary cap might spike, the leeway that he might have in the future. A team with all that stuff is easily able to guarantee their good players money in the future. They don't have to think twice about it, and they recognize that, and that is why they hold on to so much of their talent. That's the dream, right? It's great that they're able to do this. It's great for the players that they're able to do this. It's great for the fans that they're able to do this. And if every team was able to do this, then we wouldn't be calling this a privilege. But the fact of the matter is that every team is not able to do this. Because a team like, well, the Bengals, they can't and they don't. The Bengals are one of the poorest franchises in this sport. All relative here, of course, but when it comes to something like liquid cash, again, as I understand it, Cincinnati has a lot more trouble than a team like Philly when it is time for them to retain their stars, guarantee them money in advance, and get a jump on something like, again, say the salary cap. Over the years, Cincinnati has let a lot of talent walk. Jesse Bates, DJ Reader, almost T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson next year. We can see that one coming. This issue has long plagued Cincinnati, and so in turn, weaker rosters, relatively, have long plagued Cincinnati fans. Most of the talent, if you really zoom out here, that this team has had, the long-term talent that they have kept, has been a result of them picking really high in the draft. And the reason that Cincinnati has picked really high in the draft for a while is, I'm talking in circles, but the root of the problem here, their lack of stability, their lack of consistent retained stars. And right now, as we speak, Cincinnati's star quarterback, their franchise quarterback, a guy who by all means could have won an MVP this year, if not the Super Bowl this year, appears to be at risk of missing basically another full season of football as a result of the weak talent on his roster, as a result of the supporting cast that his owner, his franchise, was able to build. And I think right now, it's very easy for, say, Eagles fans, I don't mean to attack, but fans of privileged teams, I mean, I'm a Patriots fan, we have it fine, to say something like, get your money up. This is not our problem. You kind of heard this all offseason. The final conclusion in relation to Cincinnati is that they are broke. And if they weren't broke, they would be better off. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Money talks. Cash rules everything around me. It's been pretty easy for all of us to say that, taunt that, praise the billionaires who make it so that our teams don't have that problem, and not think twice about it. But here's the thing. I'm getting closer to the camera to say this part because this is the important part. I'm a fan of football. I am a fan of the league. And when I think about the future of the league, what's best for fans in the all 32 sense, what is best for a player like Joe Burrow, who regardless of what team you're a fan of, is great to watch, a guy we want to see play for a long time, I just can't help but ask here, how could we fix this in an ideal world? What would it look like? And what other changes, in turn, could we see here? Changes that would make football fair. In the same way that the salary cap leveled the playing field for the better, for fans, maybe not for players, they could be making more money. In the same way that that happened, and that became a good thing for the league, because what's best for everyone is what's best for everyone, I'd just like to ask the question, what else could we do to see the common good benefit, to see our workers benefit, and to see us as supporters of those workers benefit? Take the Cowboys, for example. Cowboys fans are suffering right now. They're not suffering because their owner is broke, they're suffering because their owner is old and selfish. This is a problem that happens when one man controls controls the wealth and the decisions, when one man owns everything. Jerry Jones traded away Micah Parsons for pride reasons and lack of patience reasons, or maybe too much patience. He took a while to negotiate, right? Billionaire Jerry Jones ruined a lot of fans' hopes and dreams for this season and for the career of Micah Parsons. Their hopes for the career of Micah Parsons, those fans. Lots of jerseys that are now useless. Lots of Dak performances, their star quarterback performances that now might feel useless, less useful. Jerry Jones nuked a lot because of a little. And that too is something that isn't fair. It's not fair to the fans and not fair to the players, I would argue too. And the ironic, poetic thing about Jerry Jones nuking things is the fact that the team that Micah Parsons got sent to is the one team in football that does not have a billionaire owner. The Packers are owned by the people. The Packers have an executive board. The Packers have an age limit on that executive board. The Packers don't pressure their general manager. They don't pressure their players. They are smart, rational, reasonable, and ethical with their money. They always seem to have a plan at quarterback. They were the first team to win a Super Bowl in this sport. I mean, I'm not a Packers fan, but I feel like part of all of us, unless you're an NFC North guy, we should all be Packers fans. We should all appreciate what they have done, what they represent, or at least from afar, because maybe that doesn't sound right to you. We should acknowledge how good their fans have it and how fair football would be if every team worked like the Packers. I think about other teams who are, in many ways, models for success in this sport. The Buccaneers, the Ravens, the Commanders with their ownership group now. And I think about other fan bases, other teams that are not playing the same sport on the books. A team like the Saints and Saints fans. The fact that guaranteed money for Saints players has stretched too far into the future for far too long. I think about how that ties to the Saints trying to play the same game that the Eagles tried to play. How the Saints tried to get a jump on a cap spike in the future, and then a pandemic hit. I think about a team like the Panthers, a team like the Dolphins, teams where in one shape or form, one way or another, individual hubris of a general manager and individual attempts to game the system have put teams and fans in unfair, unfun spots. It just makes me wish we could control this stuff. That I could build an ideal NFL where these things were not problems. That there were ways to even the cap playing field here. Ways for everyone to have to use the same books in the same manner. Yes, of course there is nuance here when it comes to money in football, and of course I'm a casual fan, but I think there's a lot of truth to the Occam's razor here of it all. The fact that sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. And to me, the simple answer is that football should be fair. That's the simple suggestion. And right now it's not. And that sucks. If you like where this conversation is headed and you're curious as to more ways that football could be radical, if you're curious to hear more Anthony Invents Football 2 here, I want to talk about the draft next, because that's the other big thing that I haven't really touched on yet. But before we do that, we've got to fund this production, this conversation. So thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. If you know me, you like my content, and you keep up with me on other platforms, you would know that in the past couple of weeks, maybe you noticed it from my new backdrop, I have moved. I'm in an entirely new place, new city. It's been a lot to stay on top of these videos, keep up with football, keep my content going in other places, work out the editing, all of that, and DraftKings has made it a whole lot easier for me. I really appreciate that they like my stuff. And if you like my stuff, I would hope you do if you're watching this video. You probably have identified a lot of themes, factors, notes, what have you, that coincide with bets that you can be placing over the course of this NFL season that probably align with the stuff that I'm betting on. My general guesses, ideas, whatever, as to what may happen next week, next quarter of the season, and by the end of the season. All of this is to say, new customers who sign up to DraftKings using my custom link or through my promo code ESQANT, who bet $5, get $200 instantly in bonus bets. So if that's your thing, go check them out. Again, that code is ESQANT. Thank you again to DK. I'm really excited to be making videos as much as I can this football season, and they have definitely made that a lot easier, especially in my new change of scenery. Now let's get back to the video. So, the NFL draft. Let's talk about the draft here in relation to, again, the Bengals, because the draft creates an unfair advantage for the wealthier teams in this sport. These things always seem to tie back to the Bengals. The NFL draft, to me, is fascinating. I've actually made a video on it on this channel before. It was the first video I ever posted, because the NFL draft is anti-labor. It's not legal. It shouldn't be legal. It's antitrust, except for the fact that the players' union in the sport of football have agreed to it. They have accepted it. They accepted it a while ago in exchange for things like drinking water from the league, small amenities from ownership, from the other guys. I think it's really fun to talk about this because, again, Occam's razor here, if I put it as simple as possible to you, imagine your job had a draft. Imagine employers everywhere had drafts across the country. Would you want to uproot everything and move to a place that you have no say over and spend 4+ years in that place? Unless you get hurt or you suck and you can be disposed of? Probably not. And maybe you're saying, well, that's silly. These athletes are paid millions. But think about it for athletes even then. Imagine if college football, basketball worked like the draft does. Imagine you're a parent of a high school athlete. Does that make sense? No. The NFL draft gives teams like the Philadelphia Eagles an advantage for two big reasons. One, salary cap math. Rookies are not that expensive, and talent often falls in the draft. And there is plenty of talent beyond the first round in the draft. A team like the Eagles, who is able to have a stable, steady roster pretty much all the time, well, they are able to frequently take a strategy known as best player available when the draft happens. Howie does it again, we always say. There's always somebody in the back half of the first round and beyond that has fallen as a result of weaker teams drafting for need that allows the Eagles to not do that. That allows the Eagles to scoop up whatever's left, to scoop up a steal. That is one way that the Eagles' privilege compounds in the draft. One of the reasons that the draft is kind of unfair and can favor better teams. But there's another big thing to talk about here. Another football 2 point to make here. Do you know what the rookie wage scale is? A lot of people do, but that's another thing where I wouldn't blame you if you don't. It's wild. The rookie wage scale, tied to the NFL draft, is essentially a rule, a standard here, a precedent that forces young players in the NFL to sign contracts, long contracts, mind you, in which there is a cap on their value, the amount of money that they can be paid off rip. Say a guy like Brock Purdy goes in the 6th round because he wasn't that great in college. Say in his 2nd year in the NFL, he takes his team to the Super Bowl. Say that offseason, his value shoots up because clearly he was better than the position he was drafted in. I would say he's very deserving of a raise. Will he get that raise? No, he will not. Because he had to sign a contract for 4 years when he entered the NFL. Sometimes it can be 5 if you go earlier in the draft, that put a limit on the amount of money he can earn. This problem applies to all players. It's really big for quarterbacks. It's why quarterback championship windows are often when they're younger. This is what creates positional value discussions during draft season. Tight ends are often not as good to draft relative to what their second contracts will be, as opposed to someone like a wide receiver, a guy like Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase. This stuff plagues the draft cycle. This stuff ruins a lot of athletes' abilities to accumulate generational wealth, especially at a position like running back, where contracts have stagnated almost over the last decade or so as a result of the fact that running backs get really banged up in their early years. That's when they kind of peak in terms of value during that first contract. It's rare for running backs to make it to that second contract. It's rare for them to be healthy through it, so therefore they get less money. It creates all sorts of problems. It allows a lot of teams, like say the Eagles, to game this system when it's their time to draft. And for better and for worse, it's why a team like the Bengals has had and then had to let walk, or almost let walk, so much star talent. The draft creates an unfair advantage for two groups. Teams who can afford to have great scouting departments. The Bengals have one of the worst scouting departments in football, one of the cheapest. The Eagles have one of the best. And also the players, awesome star players who should be able to go wherever pays them the most, who instead are confined to whatever team is the right combination of desperate and greedy. I think that if we're talking about ways to fix football, ways for football to be fair, we want to prioritize the fans and the players, and what would be best would be a system where every team is valued the same. The NFL, all of the NFL's money goes down to all 32 teams equally. Those 32 teams then transparently fund scouts, execs, their general manager, players. With that even pool of money, the players get more of that share of money than they're making right now, especially from younger ages. The fans no longer have to argue over who gets these advantages, and the teams here can devote their additional resources and profits from their success to things like their facilities, things like enticing players to want to sign with them. Kind of the way that college works. Of course, right now, someone's going to say something like, oh, well, a football player, they're going to want to play in LA more than they want to play in like New England or Buffalo. You're not going to convince me of that. You're just not. Look at Green Bay. Look at Minnesota. Look at New England and Buffalo. Football's always going to be a dog-eat-dog sport where talent is frequently misevaluated and players are happy to play wherever gives them the most opportunity. I wish contracts could be redone more frequently. I wish that guaranteed money was less of a factor in this sport. I wish that players could leave a spot if they're being mistreated, and that these spots, these currently underprivileged spots, could treat them better in the first place. To close this video out, I feel like a lot of people, I might have lost them in the second half of this thing, because they're saying something like, oh, well, if a player player could get up and leave whenever, go to another team whenever, well, there would be no continuity, and that would be bad for the sport. Or my team would lose its identity, its GM or whatever. That would be bad for the sport. Our quarterback might leave. That would be bad for us. That would be bad for the sport. The thing to me here, the reason that I think this is so worth talking about, is because it gets at the really valuable, important question, existential question: what makes us fans to begin with? What makes us football fans? What do we root for here? The truth, I think, is that it's a combination of things. Continuity. We like rooting for familiar faces. Leadership. Good leadership. We want to feel confident in the smart people that we have commanding our adventure. We would love to have a say in who our team's execs are, to vote on them even, to vote them out if they struggle, suck, are selfish. We love rooting for heroes, these quarterbacks, these generals, the stewards of our hopes and dreams, in the words of John Boyd. We love sidekicks too, the supporting cast, the familiar faces, those characters. And above all else here, we root for shared experience. I want to be able to look around me, physically where I am, and see other people who have the same common interests as me. That's all I want. That's all you probably want. That's all we want. And I think that's possible. I think that's something we can strive towards. I don't actually mean to propose radical change here. Well, I do, but I don't expect it to happen. But I do want to acknowledge that there always is potential for change, room to grow. Because complacency is good for nobody, and privilege creates animosity. Eagles fans will tell you that, and non-Eagles fans will tell you that. And that's not what football is about. It shouldn't be what football is about. Football should be fun, not tragic, and sometimes it takes a tragedy to remind us of that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a long ramble video. You can find me on other platforms this whole football season. I'll flash the socials if I haven't already. I get a lot of comments on my TikTok where I am bigger. They ask me if I'm going to have a podcast or something this year. I had one last year, stuff like that. This channel is where that's going to be. I'm going to be talking football all season long, at least once a week. The bigger picture stuff, some analysis maybe as well. If you wish there was more analysis, it's on the other place. But regardless, my goal in all of this always is just to be interesting and just to have fun, worthwhile conversations. I hope you found this to be just that, and I hope you come back next week. And as always, I hope you leave a comment, keep that conversation going. Let me know what you think, where I'm wrong. I'm just some guy who really likes this sport and the connections that it allows me to draw and make. Thank you again, and hope you have a good day, a good week.